Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX141 Walsh, welcoming you to a For Honor video on our channel today, the first of its kind in fact for our channel. And the purpose of today's video is for me to give my first impressions of a game which is taking up an increasing amount of my free time. But before we do go any further we must digress and say Happy Mother's Day, as it is Mother's Day, and Happy Mother's Day to you mum if you do indeed watch this video, which is quite possible seeing as this channel has become an incredibly popular venture amongst my family, friends and extended social circle all the way through to my work colleagues as we push towards 4,000 subscribers. But coming back to the main topic of this video, some of you may be wondering at this point, if you're regulars or not regulars of this channel, why should I care about this video? Tons of people have done reviews and first impressions of this game, so why should yours matter? Well, I come at it perhaps from a different perspective, and that is I'm a person who's absolutely useless at fighting games, which this game subscribes to as a genre. Now, fighting games for me started off with games such as Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, etc. Whenever I went round my friend's house, we'd play those games, and they would typically thrash me. I would never take a round off of them, and I couldn't even pull off a basic combo all the way through to a Hadouken. But regardless of that, I enjoyed it in a way, and I continued to play the games. But to be honest, did I buy any of those games? Hell no. And then I got the chance to play For Honor at the PC Gamer Weekender 2017 event back in February of this year. I attended alongside my friends Callum and Nick. We played the game together, Callum being a seasoned veteran of this game and Nick and I being completely new to it. And I found very quickly, after playing a couple of test rounds as part of the experience, that I was starting to enjoy this game. And I thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to learn how to play For Honor. I'm going to spend £40 and see exactly where this game takes me. And here's the starting results. As you're going to see in the background, or you have been seeing so far, some duels with myself as the Orochi class character against a number of different opponents. Now we'll come on to why I picked Orochi in a little bit, but first let's carry on with the whole context to this review. The context being that I thought to myself, you know, I'm going to break down the wall of myself thinking that I can never play a fighting game, and I'm finally going to learn how to play one, For Honor being that chosen game. So starting off this game, I thought to myself, right, well, I've got to learn the basics. And the single player mode with regards to the campaign and the tutorial were very good at providing me literally the basics, such as the light attack, the heavy attack, the guard break, the counter guard break, things along those lines. And then very quickly, when I started looking at the 12 different characters, and my goodness, they are very varied, the tutorial material provided, such as the how to fight, the basics, in terms of the basic video and the advanced video, were all very good at providing the scene for the character, giving me an idea of the combos, which are not too complicated compared to what I expected them to be, and it meant I could very quickly start to pick a character to main and then move forward. Now I decided, because of the unpredictability that a human can provide versus the AI, although I am going to say level 2 AI is quite unpredictable in this game as well, I thought I'd go straight into player versus player, whereby I've taken part in 1v1s and 2v2s most of the time, not really 4v4s, and I'll come on to why a lot later in this review. So, moving into the 1v1s and 2v2s, of course I had to expect going in, having picked Orochi, and we'll come on to why very shortly, I had to expect straight away that I would lose a lot, because I'd be going up against people who straight from the start would either be the same level as me, i.e. brand new, but most likely have some experience of fighting games, because that's why you typically buy a game of this type. Or perhaps you're just interested in the game like myself. Alternatively, you've been playing this game for some time and therefore are going to be a lot more experienced on a relative scale. Well, I picked Orochi for the reason that to overcome my cliff of being scared of fighting games or not being very good at them, I need to learn timings. I need to learn the combos as well that come off of timings. And Orochi, being a counter-attack character, is focused around timing, reading your opponent's moves and reacting to them accordingly. Now you're going to see, or you have been seeing so far, that my timings are garbage. I can't parry. I don't perform a single parry in any of the duels in the background, but I have been learning to parry recently. But on top of that, I am sort of noticing when my opponents are going to be in states where they can't block my attacks, so they're going to be very vulnerable, and I've been trying to read and dodge out the way of their attacks, so the timing aspect is coming along. And with that, that's where my enjoyment's been coming into this game on a very, very high level, because I found that there's that initial depth to this game in terms of just learning how to essentially throw out light and heavy attacks and kill your opponent. And if you have a good duel with them, which goes to the wire, that's great. But then you get that extra level of depth that comes with learning the timings, that comes with learning how to read your opponent, which comes with learning how to parry, deflect, etc. And once you can start getting to that level where you can cancel an attack and move into a deflect and then move into a heavy, moving into a follow-up combo on your light attacks, for example, just in general, I'm saying not a particular character here, then that is the level of depth that I'm looking for, and that is what this game provides, whereby I can get by with the basics. I can spam out moves, I can spam out guard breaks, but in the long haul, once I start to learn how to parry, once I start learning how to feint, etc., and I start to combo that all together, that is going to be sort of the peak of my experience, and that's where I'm going to find myself becoming that amateur, not that professional, but that amateur For Honor rather than that novice or that newbie. Now, on top of that as well, the enjoyment factor comes out the fact that when I started playing in the 1v1 and 2v2 sphere, the people I went up against in general noticed very quickly I was a novice, and they didn't adjust themselves accordingly. Indeed, a number of them exploited my weakness in terms of the fact I was new and ripped me to pieces. But those who are a little bit more forgiving, of which I'd say was a 50-50 ratio, decided to give me some tips on things I was doing. And I was doing wrong as a result, saying, you're using this move too much, you're making it easy for me to read you. Or have you tried just using a different approach, i.e. tried using a certain move which I haven't used before. Now, they're not going to give me the win essentially, but what it meant very quickly was I found myself secure and comforted in the fact that other people have been through this learning process as well. I'm not alone. And that's something I find that with fighting games and games in general, you can feel in that multiplayer space that you're alone, that you're the only person out there who's suffering and nobody else really cares and everyone else is better than you. But because of the sort of accommodation and the fact that in the end I started taking rounds off of people a lot more experienced than me, and then I started taking entire games off of people more experienced than me, that my confidence grew, and I haven't thrown For Honor in the bin. I haven't felt the need to uninstall it, something which could happen. And that is a key positive in a way, the fact that this game has had longevity for me simply because I felt confident, I felt welcomed into the fact, look, you're going to die a lot. But, of course, that what comes with that, and this brings us on to our third positive point, is the fact that dying a lot can be a major put-off, especially if it's just a repeat, the person's using the same combo, things along those lines. Well, the key thing I found is because of the round nature of this game, i.e. that it goes over the course of 5 rounds in the case of 1v1s and 2v2s, or the first to 3 I should say, that when you get those games which are sort of swaying back and forth and it ends up in the 5th round being 2-2, the blood starts to really pump, the adrenaline starts to go, and this game goes up a notch in terms of the experience. Because I like games which give me a sort of adrenaline rush feel. And to give you an example, many of you know about my World of Warships gameplays. The best games for me are the ones which go down to the wire, where both teams are doing exceptionally well and it's a case of one move can change everything and it's knowing when to time that move, etc. And it's the same thing with For Honor, that as the game goes on you find yourself, or at least in my experience, very quickly having your heart start beating a little bit faster. You find that you need to read your opponent that little bit better. You need to start thinking outside the box because your opponent's reading that sweeping attack you've been using for the last 2 rounds and now it's no longer effective. You've got to change it up fast because otherwise you're going to get punished and that's going to cost you the round. And I'm speaking at that pace to convey the sort of level of emotion, the level of sort of spirit that comes through, the adrenaline starting to go, and then when you pick up that win in that very close game, my goodness, perhaps it may have only been 2 minutes of that 5-minute round to get that win, but for you, that felt like the longest 2 minutes of your gaming lifetime. And on the other side of the coin, of course, when you lose, you walk away with that begrudging admiration for the fact, you know what, that guy outplayed me, but he outplayed me well and I need to learn from that. I need to walk away and think to myself, I had a great game, but I can improve just that little bit more. And we can always improve. There's always someone out there better than you, regardless. And that's not just in For Honor, not just in fighting games, but in life in general. You've never reached the peak when you think you've reached the peak. There's always going to be someone as good, if not better than you. And that's a mantra in my life in general. But as we fall down to the Valkyrie here, by having that in this game, I found that that creates an addictive nature to it. And I found myself sometimes, it's 10 o'clock in the evening on a Friday night, and I've said to my friends, right, I'm not playing For Honor anymore. And then at 11 o'clock, I say, right, I'm going to stop playing For Honor. Nope, still playing it. And at midnight, it's sort of, oh, right, well, that's an extra 2 hours I didn't expect to be playing it, rather than, say, Rainbow Six Siege. Well, I'm still playing For Honor. Now I'm going to stop and get some sleep. And as a result, that's what's making this game very enjoyable. The fact that it's addictive, there's a huge learning curve to it, and at the same time, it's an accommodating game. There's no sort of major risk if you lose a match. Okay, you lose your honor in that match, your opponent may taunt you a little bit, but still, it's all about having fun, it's all about learning, improving, and about the addictiveness and that sort of adrenaline rush nature you get in those very tense moments. So now we're going to switch over to some negatives at this point. And one of the key negatives I've found in this game is when I move away from the 1v1 and 2v2 into the 4v4 space. Now the 4v4s, as many of you will be aware, and for those of you not aware, I'm just going to explain now. 4v4s include a thing called gear stats, whereby when your characters are in certain equipment that you obtain as you play the game, that gear is going to provide you with enhanced stats in a certain domain whilst weakening other stats of your character. You might boost your attack whilst your speed drops. I don't know the exact way it works out. But because you start getting gear stats, that means of course there's a likelihood that you as a newer player are going to bump into people with fully stocked gear stats in terms of going up to the maximum number of 108 if I remember correctly. And that can really feel daunting. Now I'm not saying you can't take rounds and indeed entire games off of people who maxed out their gear stats, and I have done that to myself alongside my teammates, but it leads to a world where it feels as though it's an us versus them culture, i.e. us being the newer people with the low gear stats versus the them, i.e. those who have maxed out and been playing this game for so long it seems like a lifetime. But on the other side of the coin, what that also means is that you're going to get up against those people who, well, because of matchmaking, aren't going to give you an accommodating space, and you can become incredibly frustrated. So that's one area. And also, I'm not particularly keen on the idea of gear stats and the idea of speccing out characters, because I already find the variety of the 12 characters in the game in general is enough to sort of create that specification. That you've got counter-attackers, you've got characters who are disablers, etc. You don't really need the gear stat option as well to mix things up even more. But then again, I'm not saying don't play 4v4, I'm just giving you the reasons why I don't really lean towards that game mode compared to other game modes. The other item on top of this as well is the sort of, not the salty nature, that'd be the wrong word, but the very abusive and very mixed nature of certain people. And I find that some people in this game can be incredibly toxic. Now it's not to say I've thrown out my fair share of salt as well, indeed I have, but the problem is that there can be some people who really become abusive when they start to lose. And I have learned that I need to turn off my chat as a result. I don't want to see it because in general I'm a person who, when I start to see a lot of abuse come through in a video game, I actually feel put off and I don't want to play anymore. That's not just For Honor, that's a lot of things in general, and I'm a person who doesn't really lean towards violence or arguments or things along those lines. In personal life, I try to avoid them where possible. But it's just a bit of a put off, especially if you've just had a really good game against someone. It's really gone down to the wire, and then they start to throw things such as, well, the only reason you beat me is because you were a higher level than me, or the only reason you beat me is because you used that combo twice on me in that final round and it's not fair. You will bump into people who are not willing to sort of learn, not willing to give the game the space to accommodate the fact that this is a key learning experience all the way through. And of course, those are the people who you will find in the end that you'll be able to beat quite nicely because of their, in a way, I'm going to use the word arrogance and ignorance to how this game has that learning curve associated with it, one of the key positives from my perspective. So it's just something to be aware of, but it is something that applies to all video games, not just For Honor. And the final discomforting point is in terms of connections, and this is a sort of a mixed point for me because I've had very good connections in my 1v1 and 2v2 experience, but in the 4v4 experience I've had a very mixed bag of connections, and a number of people on the community side, whether it be in the Reddit for example, or the official forums from what I've heard, although I populate the Reddit every so often, I found a number of people have sort of said that the connections in this game are very bad, and in 4v4s I've seen that where games have just suddenly broken down. Now for those unaware, this game works off of a peer hosting system from what I know, or at least from what I recall from people who told me, whereby compared to the standard hosting system that you would see on a console game back in the days of Xbox 360's Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 for example, the hosting in this game is peer-to-peer across all PCs involved in the given match. So if there's two of you in a match, i.e. 1 versus 1, you'll both connect to each other's PCs. If it's a 2v2, all four of you are talking to one another in terms of your PCs. In a 4v4, that escalates up to all four of one team talking to all four of the other team. So when the connections escalate like that, it only takes one player to have a very bad connection to bring everybody else down. And we found that with the fact that one of our guys who we regularly play with has a wireless network connection. Now in general, from what I've come to understand, wired connections are better than wireless connections, and it shows on his connection in the fact that every so often he'll get an intermittent cutout or a significant amount of lag in other games we play, such as Rainbow Six Siege. But in this game we found that his wireless connection prevents him from playing 4 versus 4 modes. He can play 2v2s and 1v1s alright, but when it comes to the 4v4, as soon as he gets into the game typically and the game starts, everybody suddenly disconnects because of his connection or perhaps their connections touching his. But with that round out of the way against the enemy warden there, we're going to pull this review to a close as that's the final duel we have available. So I guess to sum up, I've thoroughly enjoyed this game so far, and indeed I absolutely love the aspects of the 1v1s and the 2v2s with the learning curve, the addictiveness of this game, and also the variety in terms of the characters, how the fights can play out, and the accommodating nature of a number of people and the rather respectful nature of players in general. But on the negative side I've found, connections being rather unreliable, especially in the 4 versus 4 game mode, and on top of that also the tendency of some members of the community, i.e. the players of this game, to be quite toxic in their nature and very abusive when it's not really called for. But again, that's more of a feature that happens in all video games and indeed in walks of life. But I've really enjoyed this game and I look forward to bringing more For Honor content on this channel if you guys and girls watching this video want me to do so. So as always, if you have enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment or subscribe for future videos on this channel. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care and stay honourable.